The night was chilly, and a thick blanket of fog had settled upon Silver Cove, making everything seem mysterious and shadowy. Waves crashed gently against the wooden docks, creaking softly as if whispering secrets to the night. Lanterns glowed dimly, casting flickering shadows on the faces of sailors preparing their ships. But among them, one ship stood out, bigger, stronger, and more mysterious than the rest. It was the HMS Daedalus. Captain Henry Walker stood proudly at the edge of the dock, his tall, sturdy frame silhouetted against the faint glow of moonlight filtering through the clouds. His thick, brown beard blew slightly in the chilly breeze, and his bright blue eyes stared sharply across the water, searching for something hidden beyond the horizon. Yet, tonight, beneath his usual courage and calmness, Captain Walker was hiding a secret that made his heart beat faster and his hands sweat despite the cool air. "Captain, do you really think tonight's the right time to set sail?" came a worried voice. It belonged to Michael Jones, the captain's first mate. Michael was young, perhaps 20 years old, with bright red hair, freckles scattered across his cheeks, and eyes that were wide with worry tonight. Captain Walker turned slowly, placing a reassuring hand on Michael's shoulder. "Michael, tonight we must sail. There's something important out there, something worth risking everything to find." Michael frowned, looking down at his worn boots. "But Captain, all the sailors are saying it's too dangerous. They say there's a storm coming, the kind we've never seen before." Walker smiled softly, his voice steady and comforting. "Michael, sailors love their scary stories. Storm or no storm, tonight we sail. Trust me, my friend. Our ship can handle anything the ocean throws at us." Michael nodded uncertainly, stepping away to ready the ship. Captain Walker turned once again to face the ocean, his smile fading into seriousness. He reached into his coat pocket, pulling out a folded piece of paper, its edges worn from constant handling. His fingers trembled slightly as he opened it, revealing a map marked with strange symbols, lines, and notes. "I must find you," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the sounds of waves and distant thunder. He quickly folded the map and slipped it back into his pocket, his eyes scanning the horizon once more as though searching for a sign. Soon, sailors were rushing about the deck of the Daedalus, preparing ropes and sails, their voices filled with nervous excitement. Captain Walker watched them silently, wondering if he was doing the right thing. But deep down, he knew he had no choice. As midnight drew near, the fog thickened, making it nearly impossible to see anything clearly. Yet Captain Walker felt compelled by something unseen, something powerful, that seemed to call him from far beyond the ocean. Just then, he noticed an elderly man standing silently near the ship, watching carefully. The old man was hunched, leaning slightly on a wooden cane, with eyes that seemed to know far more than he let on. Curious, Captain Walker approached him cautiously. "Evening, sir. Can I help you?" The old man smiled softly, but his eyes remained serious. "Captain Walker, you sail for more than just curiosity tonight, don't you?" Walker hesitated, startled by the old man's words. "How do you know?" The man chuckled lightly, pointing to the sea. "I've lived many years in Silver Cove. I've seen ships like yours set sail toward mysteries and never return. Are you prepared for that?" Captain Walker stood tall, determined. "Whatever lies out there, I must face it. There is something out there that must be found before someone else finds it first." The old man shook his head slowly. "Then you sail not toward treasure, but toward destiny itself. Be careful, Captain. Some secrets are hidden for good reason." Walker took a deep breath, nodding respectfully. "I'll keep your words close, friend. But my ship and crew are strong. We will return." The old man's gaze grew distant, voice dropping to a whisper. "I hope you're right, Captain Walker. But remember, out there in the mist, reality and ghost stories become one." Captain Walker turned slowly back toward the ship, his heart heavy with thoughts of what lay ahead. Climbing aboard HMS Daedalus, he glanced around at his crew, seeing fear and excitement mingling on their faces. "Set sail," he shouted firmly, pushing aside his own fears. Let us face whatever waits beyond this fog, together. As sails filled with wind, the Daedalus moved slowly away from Silver Cove, slipping silently into the thick fog. On shore, the old man watched silently until the ship disappeared completely, shaking his head sadly. 3 weeks later, on the same beach where Captain Walker had sailed in a mystery, two playful voices filled the air. Emma and Jake Carter, twins who had no idea that their peaceful lives were about to change forever. Little did they know that a ghostly shadow was about to drift toward the shore, bringing with it a secret that would change everything they thought they knew. But what exactly happened to the HMS Daedalus during those missing weeks? And why was Captain Walker's ship sailing back to shore, without a single person aboard? Keep listening, dear friend, because that thrilling mystery awaits in the chapters ahead. The sun peeked playfully through puffy white clouds, making the ocean waves sparkle like diamonds. It was another beautiful morning in Silver Cove, peaceful and bright, a sharp contrast to the mysterious night 3 weeks earlier when the HMS Daedalus had sailed away into the fog, vanishing without a trace. But for 15-year-old twins Emma and Jake Carter, the mystery of the missing ship was the last thing on their minds. Today was meant for adventure, laughter, and maybe even discovering something exciting along the beach. Emma, with her long, curly brown hair tied back with a bright yellow ribbon, bent down to pick up a smooth, round stone. "Jake, watch this," she called out, grinning widely as she skipped the stone across the waves. It bounced once, twice, 3 times before sinking beneath the sparkling water. Jake clapped his hands, laughing. His brown hair, tousled by the salty breeze, stuck out wildly in all directions. "Nice one, Emma, but watch mine." Jake picked up a flat pebble, took a deep breath, and threw it hard. The stone skipped impressively, bouncing 4 times before disappearing with a quiet splash. "I win again," Jake shouted, pumping his fists in triumph. Emma rolled her eyes playfully, giggling. Okay, Mr. Champion, but next time, I'll beat you for sure." As they continued walking along the shoreline, laughing and teasing each other, Jake suddenly stopped, his eyes wide with astonishment. His mouth opened slightly, and he pointed shakily toward the horizon. "Emma, look! Over there!" Emma turned quickly, shading her eyes from the sun with one hand. At first, she saw nothing but waves and endless ocean. But then, slowly emerging from the distant fog, something appeared, a dark shape drifting toward the beach. Emma squinted, heart beating faster. "Is that a ship?" Jake stepped closer to his sister, gripping her arm tightly. "Not just any ship, Emma. Look carefully. That's the HMS Daedalus." Emma gasped loudly, stepping backward. It was true. The mysterious ship, missing for 3 weeks, was silently sailing toward them. Its sails were ripped and tattered, ropes hanging loosely like spiderwebs in the wind. The ship seemed to float eerily, as if controlled by unseen hands. "But how?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "There's nobody on board." They watched, frozen in fear and amazement, as the ship came closer, drifting slowly, gently bobbing on the waves. Emma felt chills running down her spine as a strange feeling swept over her. It was almost as if the ship itself was watching them, waiting for something. "We have to tell someone," Jake finally said, breaking the uneasy silence. "Sheriff Miller needs to know." Together, they ran back toward town, hearts pounding and feet kicking up sand behind them. Within minutes, they reached Sheriff Lucas Miller's small office at the edge of Silver Cove. Sheriff Miller, a strong and dependable man, was sitting at his desk, sipping a cup of coffee. His short blonde hair was neatly combed, and he wore his usual calm expression, until he saw the twins burst into his office, breathing heavily, eyes wide with alarm. "Whoa, slow down, kids." Sheriff Miller stood quickly, placing his coffee mug aside. "What's wrong?" "Sheriff, it's the Daedalus. It's back," Jake said quickly, pointing toward the ocean. "But there's nobody on it." Sheriff Miller's face turned serious. He grabbed his hat and flashlight, hurrying outside with Emma and Jake at his heels. They reached the beach just as the Daedalus ran gently aground, coming to rest quietly on the sandy shore. People from town were already gathering, whispering nervously, unsure of what to think. Sheriff Miller stepped forward cautiously, examining the ship closely. "Stay here, Emma, Jake," he said firmly. "It might not be safe." But Jake shook his head stubbornly. "Sheriff, we found it first. We're coming too." Emma nodded bravely, holding tightly onto her brother's hand. "We're not scared, Sheriff Miller. We need to know what happened." Sheriff Miller hesitated for only a moment before nodding slowly. "All right, but stick close to me and don't touch anything." Together, they climbed aboard the Daedalus. The deck was messy, scattered with abandoned belongings, ropes, and clothing. The eerie silence made Emma shiver. "Where is everyone?" she whispered softly, looking around nervously. Sheriff Miller frowned, studying the strange scene. "I don't know, but something isn't right here." Jake bent down, picking up a sailor's hat lying abandoned on the deck. "It's as if they just disappeared into thin air." Emma moved quietly toward a small cabin door marked Captain's Quarters, heart pounding. "Sheriff, look in here." Sheriff Miller gently pushed the door open. Inside, the cabin looked abandoned, except for a blue woolen coat hanging carefully over a chair. Emma reached into the coat's pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully, eyes widening as she read aloud. "We must find the island, no matter what." Everyone looked at each other in shock. Sheriff Miller took a deep breath. Captain Walker was searching for something big, maybe something dangerous. Suddenly, a loud, echoing bang came from deep inside the ship, startling everyone. Sheriff Miller drew his flashlight, face tense with alarm. "What was that?" Emma and Jake exchanged frightened glances. The noise echoed again, louder, as if someone, or something, was below deck. "Stay close," Sheriff Miller whispered urgently. "We're not alone." But who, or what, was waiting below deck? And what secrets did Captain Walker leave behind? Hold on tightly, dear listener, because this adventure is just getting started, and the truth might be stranger than anyone imagined. Sheriff Miller stood frozen for a moment, flashlight held tightly in his hand, casting a shaky beam into the dark hallway below deck. Emma squeezed Jake's hand so tightly he winced, but he didn't let go. They waited, hearts pounding, as silence filled the air again. Heavy, thick silence that seemed to whisper secrets of its own. Maybe it was just the ship creaking, Jake whispered hopefully, trying to sound brave. But even he wasn't convinced. Sheriff Miller shook his head slowly. "Ships creak, Jake. They don't bang. Something or someone made that noise. We have to check it out." Emma took a deep breath and nodded. "We're coming too, Sheriff Miller. Whatever's down there, we're facing it together." The sheriff nodded seriously, impressed by their courage. "All right, but stay right behind me. No wandering off." Together, they moved carefully down the narrow staircase leading below deck. Each step creaked beneath their feet, echoing softly like quiet whispers. Emma's heart raced faster as the darkness swallowed them, broken only by the narrow glow of Sheriff Miller's flashlight. Below deck, shadows danced eerily along the wooden walls. The hallway stretched ahead, lined with closed doors on both sides, each promising its own secrets hidden in darkness. Sheriff Miller carefully opened the first door. Inside, there were hammocks hanging from wooden beams, blankets scattered messily, and a half-eaten meal sitting untouched on a table. Emma shivered. "It's like they disappeared in the middle of dinner," she whispered softly, glancing nervously at Jake. Jake stepped closer, carefully picking up a wooden bowl. "It's still half full. Why would anyone leave in such a hurry?" Sheriff Miller frowned deeply, worry showing on his face. Something scared them badly enough that they ran without thinking. Suddenly, a strange scratching sound echoed softly down the hall, making everyone freeze again. Sheriff Miller aimed his flashlight quickly toward the noise, eyes wide. "What was that?" Jake pointed nervously toward a door slightly ajar at the end of the corridor. "It came from down there." The sheriff nodded slowly, gesturing for the twins to follow closely. Every step seemed louder, every heartbeat heavier, as they crept quietly toward the open door. Sheriff Miller carefully pushed the door open wider, shining the flashlight inside. The room was dark and crowded with wooden barrels and large crates stacked high. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but suddenly, Emma gasped loudly, pointing toward the floor. Look! Wet footprints, fresh, clear footprints, led directly across the wooden floor toward another door at the far end of the room. They looked as if someone invisible had just walked through, dripping water as they moved. Jake stared at the footprints, mouth open in disbelief. That's impossible. Nobody else came aboard. Sheriff Miller knelt down, touching the water with his fingers. They're fresh. Someone, or something, is definitely here with us. Emma's eyes widened. Maybe it's a crew. Maybe they need our help. Sheriff Miller nodded carefully. Maybe, but stay alert. Whatever's going on, we need to be very careful. Following the footprints closely, they reached another door labeled cargo hold. Sheriff Miller grasped the handle, took a deep breath, and pushed it open quickly. They all peered inside, hearts racing. But this time, the room wasn't empty. It was filled with strange objects. Large chests, old wooden boxes, and barrels covered in strange markings filled the room from floor to ceiling. Jake moved forward curiously, eyes bright with excitement. Look at all this. What do you think is inside these? Emma reached toward a small chest resting in a corner. It was beautifully carved and strangely glowing, as if holding a magical secret. Her fingers brushed gently against the smooth surface, and instantly the chest popped open, causing everyone to jump back in surprise. Inside was something amazing: gold coins, beautiful gems, and a worn, old map glowing faintly under the flashlight's beam. Jake's eyes widened in excitement. It's treasure. Captain Walker was searching for treasure. Emma lifted the glowing map gently, her voice trembling with excitement and curiosity. But this map shows a strange island. Maybe Captain Walker found something important there. Sheriff Miller's face turned serious again. Important enough to vanish, leaving behind a ship full of treasure and unanswered questions? Before anyone could answer, another loud bang echoed above deck, shaking the walls and rattling crates and barrels around them. This time, it sounded even closer, angrier, almost as if the ship itself was trying to scare them away. We got to get out of here, Sheriff Miller said urgently, holding tightly to the glowing map. Now! As they turned to flee, another sound filled their ears, a whisper clear and cold as the wind. You took what is not yours. Emma's eyes widened in fear as she turned toward Jake. Who said that? Nobody answered, but the room suddenly grew colder, shadows flickering wildly across the walls. The ship began creaking, swaying dangerously beneath their feet. Sheriff Miller grabbed the twins' hands tightly, guiding them quickly toward the stairs. Run, he shouted, as the mysterious whisper grew louder, echoing all around them. They rushed upward toward the deck, chased by whispers, shadows, and mysteries they didn't yet understand. But even as they ran, one thought remained clear. Whatever Captain Walker had discovered on the mysterious island, it wasn't ordinary treasure. It was something much more dangerous. And as they burst onto the deck, hearts pounding, the ship trembling beneath their feet, another chilling thought filled their minds. Whatever secret HMS Daedalus held, it was determined never to let them leave alive. But could they escape in time? Or was their adventure about to take a terrifying turn they never saw coming? Keep listening, because the answers lie just ahead. Emma, Jake, and Sheriff Miller burst onto the deck of the HMS Daedalus, gasping for air, hearts racing like drums. They could barely hear their own breath over the ship's unsettling groans. Dark clouds were rapidly closing in overhead, turning the sky an ominous shade of gray. The wind howled louder, as though whispering warnings that were too frightening to speak clearly. Sheriff Miller quickly steadied himself, glancing worriedly around the deck. Stay together, he shouted over the rising wind. He tightly held the glowing map, now flickering mysteriously with pulses of bright light. Emma squeezed Jake's hand even harder, feeling safer with him close. But suddenly, Jake froze in place, eyes widening in terror. Emma, Jake whispered urgently, look behind you. Slowly, Emma turned, heart pounding, feeling an icy chill crawl up her spine. Standing silently near the ship's wheel was a shadowy figure, nearly invisible in the growing darkness. It had no clear shape or features, but seemed to watch them intensely, motionless and menacing. Sheriff Miller aimed his flashlight bravely toward the shadow, his hand trembling slightly. "Who, or what, are you?" he demanded, voice firm despite his fear. The shadow did not move or speak, but instead faded slowly into nothingness, leaving behind only a cold gust of wind that swept past the trio, causing them to shiver uncontrollably. Emma stepped closer to Jake, her eyes wide with disbelief. Did we just see a ghost?" Sheriff Miller swallowed hard, shaking his head. "I don't know, but whatever it was, I think it's trying to scare us away from the treasure, or something more valuable." Jake clutched the sheriff's sleeve, eyes wide with worry. "Then maybe we should leave before it comes back." Emma nodded in agreement, her voice shaking slightly. "Please, Sheriff, let's get off this ship." Just as they turned to leave, another shadow darted swiftly past them, making them jump and spin around nervously. Footsteps echoed loudly, yet no one else was visible. Emma felt panic rising, tightening her grip on Jake's arm. "It feels like the whole ship is alive." Sheriff Miller moved protectively in front of the twins, holding out the glowing map like a shield. "Stay calm," he said firmly, though his own voice shook slightly. "We must keep our heads clear." But suddenly, the glowing map flickered even brighter, and Sheriff Miller felt it pulling gently toward the captain's quarters, almost as if leading them somewhere important. He hesitated, curiosity fighting against fear. "It's leading us somewhere. Should we follow?" Jake exchanged an uncertain glance with Emma, then nodded bravely. "We have to know what's going on." Slowly, cautiously, they followed the map's glow back toward the captain's cabin. The ship rocked beneath their feet as the storm grew stronger. Lightning flashed overhead, illuminating the Daedalus in brief bursts of eerie blue light. Emma shuddered, noticing that the shadows around them seemed to move, whispering silently, almost as if guiding or trapping them inside. Inside the captain's quarters, the air felt heavy, as if someone had been watching, waiting for them to return. Sheriff Miller shone the flashlight carefully around the room, revealing books scattered across the desk, maps pinned chaotically to the walls, and strange sketches of an unfamiliar island. The glowing map suddenly tugged gently toward a small wooden chest hidden beneath Captain Walker's desk. Sheriff Miller knelt down, carefully pulling the chest forward. Jake and Emma watched breathlessly as the chest opened on its own, revealing another smaller object, a strange, shimmering compass made of pure gold. Its needle spun wildly, as though confused or frightened. Sheriff Miller picked it up cautiously, eyes filled with curiosity. "It seems to point somewhere special, but where?" Before anyone could respond, a chilling voice echoed around the room. "You must return what you took." Emma gasped, stepping back fearfully, searching desperately for the voice's source. "Who said that? Who are you?" The compass glowed brighter, trembling in Sheriff Miller's hand as if afraid. Suddenly, footsteps thundered above their heads, as if 100 invisible sailors ran across the deck. The voice spoke again, louder, angry this time. "Leave the compass. Leave now, or never leave at all." Jake shook his head firmly, voice trembling but brave. "No, Captain Walker trusted us to find the truth. We can't give up now." The ship lurched violently beneath their feet, knocking them off balance. Sheriff Miller stood quickly, holding tightly to the compass and the glowing map. "We've overstayed our welcome," he said urgently. "Run quickly." They scrambled out of the cabin, racing across the deck as shadows moved angrily around them, blocking their path and whispering angrily in voices too faint to understand clearly. Emma's heart hammered as she pushed forward, desperately holding onto Jake's hand. Just as they reached the ship's railing, prepared to leap back onto shore, a shadow rose before them, blocking their escape. Its dark shape towered menacingly, eyes glowing faintly in anger. "You cannot leave with what belongs to us," the shadow growled deeply. Sheriff Miller stepped bravely forward, holding the compass toward the shadow, his voice firm yet calm. "We don't want trouble, but Captain Walker wanted us to find the truth. Let us pass." The shadow paused, hesitating momentarily. Then, with a final growl of anger, it faded into nothingness, leaving a path clear to the shore. The trio leaped off the Daedalus onto solid ground, gasping for breath, shaking with fear and relief. They turned just in time to see the ship slowly drifting back out to sea, vanishing into darkness once again. Sheriff Miller, breathing heavily, stared at the golden compass glowing brightly in his palm. Emma moved close, voice quiet but steady. "Sheriff, what does it mean?" He shook his head slowly, worry clear in his eyes. "Whatever we found, it's bigger than any of us ever imagined." But as he spoke, a shadowy figure watched silently from nearby, hidden in darkness, whispering softly, "You cannot hide from what's coming." Who was this mysterious watcher, and what terrifying secrets still waited to be uncovered? Keep listening closely, dear friends. The adventure is only beginning. Back in Sheriff Miller's cozy office, warm lamplight filled the room, casting gentle shadows on the walls. Outside, rain tapped lightly against the window, washing away any trace of the frightening events aboard the HMS Daedalus. Emma and Jake sat huddled together on a small bench near the sheriff's cluttered desk, wrapped in thick woolen blankets. Despite being safely indoors, the twins couldn't stop shivering, not from cold, but from what they'd just experienced. Sheriff Miller paced nervously around the room, his footsteps creaking softly on the wooden floorboards. His brow furrowed deeply, eyes darting anxiously from the strange compass to the glowing map now resting on his desk. He carefully picked up the map again, staring at the unfamiliar island marked in faded ink, surrounded by symbols he didn't understand. Jake leaned forward curiously, pointing toward the center of the map. "Sheriff, do you think Captain Walker was looking for something special on that island?" Emma nodded quickly, eyes bright with excitement despite her fear. "Maybe that's why those shadows didn't want us to take the compass. Maybe it's supposed to lead us there." Sheriff Miller sighed deeply, glancing gently at the twins. Whatever Captain Walker found, it wasn't ordinary treasure. I think he uncovered something people weren't meant to find. Emma moved closer, her voice trembling slightly with excitement. "Then we should follow the map and find out what it is. Captain Walker trusted us to finish what he started." Sheriff Miller hesitated, worry clear on his face. "It's risky. We have no idea what we'll find or what dangers might be waiting." Jake stood up bravely, his eyes filled with determination. "Captain Walker risked everything to discover the island's secret. If we don't try, who will?" Sheriff Miller looked at Jake and Emma, seeing their bravery and knowing he couldn't stop them now. Finally, he nodded slowly. "All right, but we'll need to prepare carefully." Suddenly, the lights flickered, causing everyone to jump nervously. Sheriff Miller's radio crackled loudly, startling them further. A deep, scratchy voice echoed through static-filled airwaves. "You cannot run forever. Return the compass, or suffer the consequences." Emma gasped, holding Jake's arm tightly, eyes wide with fear. "Sheriff, who is that?" Sheriff Miller quickly reached out, turning off the radio with shaking hands. His voice was calm, yet filled with urgency. "Someone knows we have the compass. Someone dangerous." Before he could continue, the office door burst open, making everyone jump. Standing in the doorway, soaked with rain and breathing heavily, stood old Captain Henry Walker himself. His coat was torn, beard wet and messy, eyes wide with urgency. "Sheriff Miller, Emma, Jake," Captain Walker shouted, rushing inside and slamming the door shut behind him. "You must listen. There isn't much time." Emma and Jake jumped up, stunned to see the captain alive. Jake stepped forward, eyes wide with amazement. "Captain Walker, you're alive, but how?" Walker quickly held up his hand, his voice serious. "I barely escaped. I hid on the ship while shadows guarded me. Creatures trying desperately to protect the island's secret." Sheriff Miller moved closer, deeply concerned. "What's so important about this island?" Captain Walker lowered his voice, eyes haunted. The island holds something powerful, more powerful than any gold or jewels. It's something the shadows are determined to keep hidden forever. The compass you found is the only way to locate it, and now that you have it, the shadows will never stop hunting you. Emma stepped forward bravely, looking directly at Captain Walker. Then tell us what it is, Captain. We can help. Walker shook his head slowly, sadness filling his eyes. I wish I could tell you everything, but the secret is far too dangerous to share, not until you see it with your own eyes. Just promise me you'll trust your hearts. Suddenly, lightning flashed brightly outside, illuminating a tall figure standing silently in the darkness outside the office window. Emma gasped loudly, stumbling backward. Someone's watching us. Walker moved quickly, shielding the twins. They found us. You must leave tonight before they can stop you. Sheriff Miller quickly grabbed a backpack, filling it with supplies. Captain, come with us. We'll protect each other. Walker shook his head firmly. No, Sheriff. My place is here, buying you time. The island chose them, he said, nodding toward Emma and Jake, and only they can uncover the truth. Jake stepped forward anxiously. But Captain, Walker gently placed his strong, weathered hand on Jake's shoulder, smiling warmly. You remind me of myself, Jake, brave, curious, and strong-hearted. Trust yourself. Emma nodded seriously, determined to be brave. We promise we'll find the truth. Walker smiled again, eyes filled with hope. Then go now, and never lose sight of each other. Remember, courage will protect you when darkness comes. With a final glance at the captain, Sheriff Miller opened the back door quietly. Together, the three of them slipped into the rainy night, clutching the glowing map and the golden compass tightly, hearts pounding with excitement and fear. As they vanished into the stormy darkness, Captain Walker turned slowly toward the window, meeting the cold gaze of the shadowy figure still lurking outside. His voice trembled softly, yet defiant. You won't stop them. They're stronger than you think. The shadowy figure's eyes flashed red briefly, voice low and threatening as it replied, We shall see. What dangerous secrets awaited Emma, Jake, and Sheriff Miller on their journey ahead? Would they survive long enough to uncover the island's incredible secret? Or would they fall victim to the darkness determined to keep it hidden forever? Keep listening closely, friends, because the adventure is about to take an even more thrilling turn. Rain poured down fiercely, soaking the trio as they hurried silently through the darkened streets of Silver Cove. Sheriff Miller led the way, holding the glowing map securely beneath his heavy coat. The golden compass trembled slightly in Emma's hand, its needle spinning wildly, almost as if afraid. Jake stayed close beside his sister, his eyes constantly scanning the shadows around them, ready for any sign of danger. Every house they passed stood dark and silent, the town fast asleep and unaware of the drama unfolding outside. Lightning flashed above them, briefly lighting the path ahead, making shadows leap and dance across the streets like restless spirits. Thunder echoed loudly, shaking the ground beneath their feet, almost as if the sky itself warned them to turn back. But Sheriff Miller pressed onward, determined not to slow down. He knew that every second counted. The mysterious shadows chasing them were powerful and dangerous. If they stopped now, they'd surely be caught. Keep moving, Sheriff Miller shouted through the heavy rain, glancing worriedly behind him. We have to reach the docks. Emma tightened her grip on the compass, calling back nervously. But Sheriff, how will we sail in this storm? Sheriff Miller shook his head, water streaming down his face. Captain Walker prepared a small boat. He knew this might happen. We just have to trust him. Finally, they reached the docks, the rough waves crashing violently against the shore. Sheriff Miller pointed toward a small, sturdy wooden boat tied carefully near the water's edge. There! Hurry! Jake rushed forward, quickly untying the rope as the waves splashed around him. He held the boat steady while Emma and Sheriff Miller carefully climbed aboard, the small vessel rocking dangerously beneath their weight. As Jake pushed away from shore and jumped aboard, a sudden chill filled the air, colder than any storm they'd ever felt. Everyone froze, feeling watched. A deep, menacing growl echoed through the rain, sending shivers down their spines. "You cannot escape," the voice hissed angrily, coming from somewhere hidden in the shadows on shore. Sheriff Miller quickly grabbed the oars, rowing hard, fighting against the powerful waves threatening to pull them back toward the voice. "Hold on tight," he shouted, his muscles straining with each pull. "We can't stop now." Jake hugged Emma protectively, eyes wide as shadows appeared on shore, moving swiftly, dark figures blending with the storm itself. Lightning flashed again, revealing their glowing red eyes, watching the boat angrily as it pulled further away. Emma's voice trembled with fear. "They're following us." Sheriff Miller kept rowing desperately, battling the storm with every ounce of strength. Waves crashed violently against their small boat, threatening to tip them over at any moment. Jake looked up in terror as a massive wave rose high above them. "Sheriff, look out!" Jake shouted, pointing upward. The sheriff glanced up quickly, just as the wave crashed down upon them, nearly knocking everyone overboard. The boat filled with seawater, tossing and turning dangerously. Emma clung desperately to the compass, her heart racing as she screamed Jake's name. "I'm here, Emma," Jake called, grabbing his sister's hand tightly, refusing to let go despite the violent tossing of the sea. The compass suddenly began glowing brightly, its needle finally pointing steadily forward, guiding them through the raging storm. Sheriff Miller noticed this quickly, his strength renewed by hope. "Emma, keep holding high," he yelled through the storm. "The compass is showing us the way." Guided by the mysterious compass, Sheriff Miller steered them bravely onward, fighting against wind and waves. After what felt like an eternity, the storm slowly began to ease, revealing a faint light ahead, glowing gently on the horizon. "Look!" Emma shouted excitedly, pointing toward the glowing light. "That must be it, the island from Captain Walker's map." Jake leaned forward, eyes wide with wonder. The island looked magical, glowing softly beneath moonlight, its shoreline shining with silvery sand. Palm trees swayed gently, whispering softly as though welcoming the exhausted travelers. Sheriff Miller smiled in relief, steering the boat carefully toward shore. "We made it," he whispered gratefully. "But our adventure is far from over." As they stepped onto the soft sands of the mysterious island, Emma noticed the compass glowing even brighter, its gentle hum vibrating softly in her hand. Jake gazed around curiously, amazed by the beautiful yet strange surroundings. But before they could celebrate, a shadow moved swiftly among the trees, watching silently. Emma felt a sudden chill again, sensing danger nearby. She turned quickly, eyes searching anxiously through the darkness. "Sheriff," she whispered urgently, "I think someone, or something, is watching us." Sheriff Miller nodded cautiously, gripping the glowing map tightly. "Stay close. This island is full of secrets and dangers we don't yet understand." As they stepped further onto the island, unaware of the eyes that followed their every move, a gentle voice whispered softly on the breeze, carrying a haunting warning only Emma could hear clearly. "Welcome, brave souls, but beware. The island knows your heart, and it never lets go." Emma shivered slightly, tightening her grip on Jake's hand, knowing their true adventure was just beginning. What secrets lay hidden on this mysterious island? And could they survive long enough to discover them? Keep listening closely, friends, because the island's incredible secret is about to be revealed, and you won't believe what's waiting ahead. Emma, Jake, and Sheriff Miller moved cautiously through the dense jungle, guided only by the soft glow of the golden compass. Trees towered above them, their twisting branches creating strange shapes against the moonlit sky. Exotic birds called quietly in the distance, their sounds almost like whispers in an unknown language, echoing gently through the shadows. Emma shivered, holding the compass tightly, feeling its soft hum grow stronger with every step. Jake walked beside her, eyes wide and alert, scanning every shadowy corner. Sheriff Miller stayed close, gripping the glowing map firmly, his flashlight casting uncertain beams through the thick foliage. "Stay alert," Sheriff Miller whispered quietly. "We don't know what might be watching." As they continued deeper into the island, the jungle suddenly opened into a wide clearing, revealing an ancient stone temple rising proudly from the center. Its walls were covered in strange symbols, softly glowing with faint golden light, matching perfectly with the gentle glow of the compass. Jake gasped, stepping forward in awe. "Look at that temple. Do you think that's what Captain Walker found?" Emma moved closer, her voice barely a whisper. "It must be. The compass led us straight here." Sheriff Miller hesitated, eyeing the temple carefully. "Be careful. Something feels strange about this place." They approached the temple slowly, the air thick with silence, broken only by their footsteps on the stone floor. Suddenly, a deep, powerful voice echoed around them, startling everyone. "Who dares enter the Temple of Truth?" Emma quickly stepped back, nearly dropping the compass. Jake grabbed her arm protectively, eyes wide with surprise. Sheriff Miller stood bravely, holding the map high. "We're here to uncover the truth, just like Captain Walker intended." Suddenly, torches lining the walls of the temple burst to life, filling the room with warm, golden light. At the far end, seated upon a massive stone throne, sat an ancient guardian with eyes glowing softly like emeralds. He was tall and wise, with silver hair flowing gently over his broad shoulders. The guardian stood slowly, his voice echoing powerfully throughout the chamber. Captain Walker found this island and discovered its greatest secret. Yet, he chose to protect it rather than exploit it. Will you prove worthy of knowing the truth? Emma stepped forward bravely, holding up the compass. "Captain Walker trusted us. We promise we'll honor that trust." The guardian smiled softly, studying each of their faces carefully. "Then you must first pass the test of courage." Suddenly, the torches flickered violently, shadows swirling around them, whispering fearfully. Dark figures emerged from the darkness, their red eyes glowing menacingly. Emma gasped, stumbling backward as the figures drew closer. Jake grabbed her hand tightly, determined. "Remember what Captain Walker said. Courage will protect us." Sheriff Miller stood firmly between the twins and the shadows, calling out bravely, "We won't run. We're not afraid." As they stood together, courage flowing through them, the shadows faded into nothingness, leaving behind only silence. The guardian smiled proudly, nodding his approval. "You've proven your bravery. Now, the final test, the truth." He stepped aside, revealing a large, shimmering mirror. "Step forward and see clearly. But beware, the truth can be both beautiful and terrifying." Emma moved first, taking a deep breath, heart pounding. As she gazed into the mirror, images began to form. She saw Captain Walker aboard the Daedalus, battling fiercely against the shadow creatures, protecting a small, glowing stone with incredible power. The captain vanished, hidden magically by the island to protect its secret, never truly lost. Jake stepped forward next, seeing himself and Emma bravely facing dangers ahead. Guardians of the island's secret, fighting courageously against shadows determined to steal its power. Sheriff Miller saw himself protecting Silver Cove, standing firm against shadows threatening their town, brave and unyielding in the face of fear. The guardian spoke gently, his voice filled with respect. "You now understand the island's truth. Its power must remain hidden, protected only by those pure of heart." Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed behind them. "And that is why I chose you." They turned swiftly, shocked yet thrilled to see Captain Walker himself standing near the temple entrance, smiling warmly, eyes sparkling with pride. "Captain Walker!" Jake shouted joyfully, running toward him, Emma close behind. Walker embraced them warmly, his voice soft and grateful. "You saved me. Your courage broke the island's spell, allowing me to return. But now we must protect this secret together." Sheriff Miller nodded solemnly, stepping forward. "Captain, what is this island's true power?" Walker smiled mysteriously, his voice firm. It's something precious, more powerful than gold or jewels. Hope and courage itself. Whoever holds this island's secret holds power over hearts. But it must always remain hidden, guarded from those who seek darkness. Emma understood clearly now, holding Jake's hand tightly. We'll keep it safe. You can count on us. Suddenly, the Guardian's eyes grew serious, voice deepening urgently. Then prepare yourselves. Darkness is already on its way, determined to claim the island's power. The temple shook violently, shadows rising angrily, whispering fiercely, echoing threats all around. Sheriff Miller drew his flashlight, standing protectively before Emma, Jake, and Captain Walker. We have to fight together, Sheriff Miller shouted bravely, or the truth will be lost forever. As darkness closed in, Emma, Jake, Sheriff Miller, and Captain Walker stood shoulder to shoulder, courage lighting their eyes, ready to defend the greatest secret the world had never known. But would they succeed against the approaching darkness, or would this hidden truth fall into shadowy hands forever? Hold tight, friends, because the real adventure, the final battle for the HMS Daedalus's incredible secret, is about to begin.